It is really my privilege to introduce, and he has introduced himself very well. I probably have not much else to say, but our Clay County Board of County Commissioners, he is our chairman, and he is very accessible, has been in the county, has helped a lot of organization, and has done a lot of wonderful things in the county. And it is my privilege to ask him to come up and be our keynote speaker this morning.
Realize we're going to be videoing. We're rehearsing a bit more. Well, good morning. First of all, thank you for the opportunity to come in and speak with you. I always enjoy getting out to talk to groups in the county. It's a privilege to represent the Board of County Commissioners. Unlike some of my colleagues in government that don't believe it's a good thing to get out and talk to folks, I believe completely in the opposite and try to do it as much as possible. And in some cases, you may not agree with what I have to say, but you'll know exactly where I stand on a particular issue. So as we go through the morning, the only thing I ask is do not throw shoes or... I do get excited about telling our story of Clay County to the folks that live here. And whether you're a taxpayer, a resident, a voter, or all three, or just somebody that works in the county, and where we're going, because as I said, I'm a strong believer in making sure that everybody is informed, because it actually technically makes my job easier. You know what we're doing, you know when we're going to do it, you basically get a chance to give me feedback, which is important, and I take all that feedback to heart. Now, in some cases, that feedback actually changes minds, and in some cases, it doesn't. But it's important to know where everybody sits on a particular issue. And also, it also gives us an opportunity to explain a rationale, because no decision that we make on a county level is done in a vacuum. There's always factors that play a part in making a specific decision on anything. So let me give you some numbers first, which I think will be a good starting point for us to understand where Clay County sort of sits. Florida Tax Watch, which is a third-party organization which looks at all taxes in all counties and all municipalities in the state of Florida, ranks us 40th out of 67 counties in the tax burden on its citizens. So that's actually pretty good, because we're, I think, the 25th largest in population, but we're 40th in terms of taxes. Another way to look at that is on a per capita basis, because of course we have smaller counties that obviously make less revenues and spend less, but on a per capita basis we're 64th in per capita total county tax revenues and 65th in total expenditures. So that's out of 67 counties. So that's a pretty good value for the services that you get in terms of what we provide from the county commission. Now, I use those numbers a lot in meetings, and then everybody runs out afterward and says, well, Commissioner Cella says we're undertaxed and he's going to raise taxes. No, we're not saying that. We're just saying, as a point of reference, we get a pretty good value for what we do. And what's really interesting is that people forget that we're citizens, we're taxpayers on the Board of County Commissioners. So if we have to raise a fee or we have to raise a tax, we pay that. We don't get an exemption. So we're right there with you in terms of that respect. A couple of numbers you should know. Last year, this current year, I'm already into next year because we're working on the 2019-20 budget. The Sheriff's Office had a budget of $56.1 million. The Fire and Rescue, which is under the Board of County Commissioners, was at $26 million. We collected, as a government, only $86 million in terms of property tax, ad valorem property tax. So the property taxes that we collect don't even pay for fire and police service, which is really our number one job, is to make sure that people in the county are protected. So you can see the property tax is already taken up. We're already in the hole, and we use fees and other things, monies from the state in various categories to pay for the rest of it. One of the things that you should also know is that we've got, I don't know, I think it's well into the 60s in terms of different funds that we collect monies from. And in some cases, many of those funds, the money has to go back to a specific need or specific service. So even though we may get, $200 million more over the top of that $86 million from property tax, we can't just take that dollar and spend it where we think we need it. We have to spend it in a specific spot. So that makes for some really
heavy accounting, and I'm glad that I don't have to do any of that. I just have to worry about spending it and figuring out how we're going to be able to bring the revenues in. We're ranked 37th in the percentage increase of property tax in the state since 2012. That's at 14.7%. St. John's, as you would expect, probably is the most expensive, and it is 30.5%. Duval County is at 23%, and statewide it was just about 30%. So we're actually running below what the state average is in terms of increases in property taxes. And as I said, ranked 25th in total population. 91.2% of the people that live in Clay County live in the unincorporated areas. That means they're outside the town of Orange Park, Green Cove Springs, Penny Farms, or Keystone Heights. That's a number that a lot of people don't realize it's that big, and that's primarily why we have to do what we do in terms of taking care of all kinds of things. Coming up, First Coast Expressway. A lot of people have heard about that. It's here. If you haven't driven out Highway 16, just west of the fairgrounds, do it. It's amazing in terms of what they've done in a very short period of time in terms of clearing that land, and they're already starting to build the overpass. Or you can even go Henley and look, and it's pretty amazing how far you can see. It is truly incredible, and as they continue to move forward, that puts pressure on us to make sure that we're prepared for it. Zoning in those areas, that there will be interchanges are done so that certain kinds of businesses and other kind of commercial activities will be in the proper place, as well as residential. And also, most importantly for us, is to make sure that we have infrastructure, roads, that can get you to the First Coast Expressway, because there's no sense in having an expressway if you can't get there. So that's something that we're working hard on. And as part of that, the county has, in its history, had a few bonds. Don't often borrow money. And a lot of people look at that as a good thing. But at the same time, that has also inhibited growth in certain aspects. Because I can ask how many people have a car loan and how many people have a home loan in this room, and there'll be a lot of hands being raised. So if you borrow money for good purposes, it's not a bad thing. And so we're looking at bonding at probably to the tune of about $130 million. Now, that won't increase your taxes because that all comes out of 1 cent sales tax, which you're already paying. And that goes up every year, and that's paid by not only residents but non-residents. And about 40% of our sales tax is actually paid for by people outside the county. And then you've got your gas tax, which we did go up a nickel on 2 years ago, and we get about $3 million a year, and that money is spent specifically on roads. That's by state statute. And there's also the developer's fee, the transportation impact fee, which we just reinstituted and raised, so that can help us pay for those roads as well. And those roads that we're looking at: Sandridge Road, Russell Road, County Road 315, County Road 315B, all to 4 lanes. Widen portions of 218 as well. And it'll also allow us to build the Cheswick Oaks extension southwest to Brandon Field to hook up with the First Coast Expressway there. That is the world's largest cul-de-sac in Cheswick Oaks, if you know what I'm talking about. Because you go in, but you can't get out. And we've got residents in Clay County that actually have to go to Duval County to come back to get home again. And it's amazing to me that we haven't been able to do something before this. And that goes for our fire service and police as well. If they go up there, they've got to go through Duval County and go all the way up around on Argyle or through Oakleaf to get down to Cheswick Oaks because they can't go any other way. So that'll hopefully help with that. And also we've got an extension 218, which is actually being paid for by a developer, which will hook 315 right on that hairpin turn that you go through as you're headed toward the transfer station. It'll shoot straight across and hook up with 218 at an interchange that will be built there by, again, the developer for the Shadow Lawn development there. So hopefully those things will get us a real jump start on making sure that people can get around the county and be able to get to where they need to go. And then that just is an ongoing process, obviously. We've got a stormwater fee that we're looking at. We haven't passed it yet. That would be a $60 per parcel. Essentially, one of the, I was somewhat kidding in the beginning when I introduced roads, drainage, and garbage, but those are the 3 things that light up my phone on a continuous basis. And we have some real problems in the area in Clay County as far as drainage is concerned, coming off roads, backing up between developments. We often see that where an existing development sees a new development go in next door. For some reason, 20 years later, we're a little smarter about making sure that they're higher so they don't get flooded. But by putting them higher, that puts the other development at risk because the water all flows off. So there's drainage problems. And so this money will be about $4 million a year and will be used specifically to correct some of those problems. We resurface probably 40 to 50 roads a year. Doesn't seem like it, but I think we got 700 or 800 roads, and if we wanted to do it all in 1 year, it would cost us $80 million to resurface all the roads. So you can see the numbers are big. They're getting bigger because Clay County is getting bigger, and that's the pressure that we feel in terms of making sure that we spend the dollars as effectively as possible. We've learned a lot of things here in the 3 years I've been on the commission. We learned from a tourism standpoint why people come here and where they come from, and you might be surprised. Anybody have a guess as to where the most people come from in terms of visiting Clay County?
Cleveland, Ohio.
You're right. No.
New York. New York.
Well, a lot of people say, Jacksonville or whatever. It's actually Atlanta. Makes sort of sense. Atlanta, Gainesville, Orlando, Tampa, and Jacksonville. Those are the top 5 points where people come in from. We know a little bit about our fairgrounds. We did a study in cooperation with the University of Florida Architectural School. We commissioned a study. They came back with a study, told us what we need to make that thing from a diamond in the rough to a real diamond so that it can be a real tourism attractor. We know that already that all the events, including the fair and everything else that happens out there, 51% of the people that attend the events are from outside the county. They bring in money, they leave the money, they leave, they go home. We don't have to take care of them anymore. That's a good thing. So we just got a $500,000 grant from the state, which is going to help with some refurbishing of the expo buildings, and we're probably looking at spending probably a couple million more. And here's the thing that in government, because we know a little bit about where all this money comes from and where it's got to be spent. A lot of people say, well, what are you spending money at the fairgrounds for? Why don't you take that money and put it on the roads? Well, that's because it comes from a tourism development tax, the bed tax, and that's all it can be used for, is to provide some mechanism to attract new people into the county and then hopefully stay in the hotels and then renew that 5-cent bed tax, so that bottom line is we can continue to try to attract people. And so the fairgrounds, we already know, is a major attractor, and it's going to be less than 3/4 of a mile from an exit off the First Coast Expressway. So that is going to be a real prime location for events and being able to attract people to Clay County, hopefully spend money and then stay and spend more money and come back and stay again at some point. Economic development, we're working hard to attract new businesses. To be honest, we haven't had a great deal of success with that. I'm not sure why, but we need to do something different, and so we're looking at that in terms of maybe perhaps doing more tourism-oriented things. Take advantage of some of the new kayak launches that we're putting in. Camp Chow that has some of the new facilities there. We've been written up in national publications 3 or 4 times in the last year about the tree houses out there, the tree house campgrounds. And so we're looking to take advantage and take care of getting those information pieces out to whether it's social media, websites, or national publications. And to help us do that, for the first time in 11 years, the commission will actually have a public information officer. Annalisa Winter has just joined us. She was with the state of Florida and in the forestry department. It's important, again, for us to get that information out. And many times it's very frustrating for me especially, because I'll get a phone call or I'll see something on Facebook. Why are they doing this? How come they don't know this? Well, we did know it and we did do something about it, but nobody knew about it. And that's a failure of ours as well, not to tell people that something was done. So we're trying to address that. Some of you may have seen or heard a little bit about the sheriff's budget. If you haven't, he asked for $10.2 million more than he got last year. That's a break-the-bank number. We're thinking that revenues will be up about $6 million just as we stand, with no tax increases, and most of that would be through increasing values of real estate. And so your property tax will go up a little bit, but it's not an increase in terms of the percentage of what we charge you as far as a tax rate. So just to give you an example, in 2016 and 17, it was $50.2 million. In 2017-18, it was $51.4 million. So that was the first year the sheriff was in for his budget. That was a 2% increase. Last year, we gave him a 10% increase to $56 million. And this year, he wants to go to $66.8 million, which is a 17% increase. Most of you deal with budgets. If somebody dropped a 17% increase on a line item onto your budget, you'd be having a problem. we have a problem. So we're working with the sheriff, trying to get him to see if he can't see his way clear to a little less than that and still provide the safety that we think that we need here in Clay County. It's a real delicate balancing act. We don't want to say no to the sheriff, but at the same time, we are the ones that are responsible for the oversight and to make sure that we represent you, the taxpayers, and you're getting the value that you need without breaking the bank. And that's not always an easy line to walk. Some of you may have seen some of our headlines involved with the school board. That's also an interesting one. I don't want to say too much about that because we got notice yesterday that they are going to proceed with a lawsuit to sue us over not placing a increase in the sales tax on the ballot for them in 2019. We want to do it in 2020 during a general election rather than a special election. They disagree, and so we'll see what happens in court. We feel very good about our case based on some previous precedents, and we'll see what happens with that. When you go to court and you go see a judge, there's pretty much anything can happen there. So first thing I asked, Courtney Grimmons, our county attorney, and the first thing I asked her, we didn't make anybody mad over there, did we? Every time they wanted something like in the courthouse moved or painted or something, at least we'll go in square one. We won't have anybody have a grudge against us. And I noticed on the little flyer there that was attached to one of my emails that we were going to talk about nonprofits as part of the headline of the talk, so I'd be remiss if I didn't bring that up. You would be hard-pressed, and it would be difficult to find anybody who has not been touched in some way by a nonprofit organization here in Clay County. I don't have the official total, but I think Clay County has more nonprofit agencies than pretty much any other county in the state of Florida. And that's the heart of the giving part of what Andre was referring to before in terms of businesses and non-businesses trying to, in Clay County, businesses provide a lot of revenue for our nonprofits. And so I had an opportunity to see what a nonprofit means to our community earlier this week. I'm usually out in the morning around 7:30, 8 o'clock walking. I walk for about 2.5 miles, about a half hour, 45 minutes. And I'm used to taking phone calls during that time frame. And this one came in, was from somebody we met during the campaign 4 years ago, a supporter. They've become friends. She often calls, and I'll give her advice or tell her where she can find something. Well, this time she called, and she's a caregiver. Her husband is a veteran. He's had a real tough time over the last 6 months with health. She's been dealing with the VA, and that's enough in itself to make you sick based on some of the stories she's told me about appointments. And they were in Gainesville. They sent them to Jacksonville. They got to Jacksonville, sent them back to Gainesville because they can't do what they wanted to do in Jacksonville, but they could do it in Gainesville, and on and on. Her sister died in the last year or so. She called, and first thing out of her mouth was, I slept with these pills all night, and I'm ready to take them, because I can't take it anymore. I'm going to kill myself. Well, I'm prepared for, I got a pothole in front of my house. My pond is running over into my backyard. I hate you for what you voted for against the school board. I'm prepared for those. I wasn't prepared for that. So in the memory banks, I'm like, well, what would I do? Who does she call? Who do I call? So being on the commission and being somewhat familiar, and of course now I've got the list, so I'm a lot more familiar. I knew Clay Behavioral Health was someplace that she probably should talk to pretty quickly. So my wife talked to her. She's an RN, tried to assure her that all these feelings that she had are really normal. She's getting anxiety. And a lot of it was because she was in this cycle. And so bottom line is we got her in touch with Clay Behavioral. They did a real quick assessment on her. They're going to get her some counseling. I talked to her yesterday, and it almost seems like her old self is back. And I think a lot of it was because it was all internal. She didn't think she had any place to go. She didn't think she had the ability to deal with what was coming. And they were able to help her. So thank you, Clay Behavioral. And by the way, she didn't get special treatment because a commissioner told her call. That was what they gave her. So we thank them, and certainly a number of other folks in this room are on the sheet probably could have helped as well, but that was the one I was most familiar with. So, as you know, nonprofit organizations play a vital role in building healthy communities. And in fact, well-resourced nonprofits that are well-connected like this in the community can catalyze growth and opportunity as well. And I think we see that here. Yeah, your own website, Clay County Nonprofits, 5% of the workforce. In 2015, more than $33 million in direct program delivery to Clay's residents, $2.4 million in fundraising, $30 million in grants and contributions, and collecting some, $4 million in in-kind donations. It's a big part of the economy in Clay County, and it's all thanks to folks like you who work for nonprofits, or if you're working for a profit company, do something that can help the nonprofits. I'll be talking to you now about the $35 line. So that being said, we do appreciate what you do. Sometimes it doesn't seem that government knows what you do or can help with what you do. But we know that a lot of those needs that are being met by you folks, we would have to deal with, or they would go unmet, more importantly, and more likely. And so, whether it's local, state, or federal government, in many cases, though, government shouldn't be involved in those because we don't do a good job with a lot of that. Government is not made to be compassionate or respond quickly with things. It just doesn't happen that way. My first couple of months on the commission, they were saying, calm down, government takes a long time. I was like, well, this is right here. We got it. We have the money. Let's just go do it. Oh, no, we got to have a public hearing. We've got to have an ordinance. We've got to bring it back for a second public hearing. Somebody objects, and then 6 words have to be redone. Then we have to vote on it again. And then we got to go out and we've got to get purchasing to give us a request for proposal. And that's going to be 30 days. And then we have to analyze the proposals that come in because not necessarily the lowest one is the best one because of this. And then, 6 months later, I'm still sitting there waiting. How come we can't put the ball field in? I don't understand. I'm just a rookie commissioner here. So that's why I say in terms of government working quickly, that's not something that we should be involved in. We do have an era of your organizations have growing needs, and it's on the side of the fence. On my side of the fence, it's shrinking resources because the state, believe it or not, it keeps putting obstacles in our way to be able to generate revenue, but they keep putting mandates on us that they don't pay for, and so we've got to pay for them. So it's a difficult situation for everybody. We get a lot of requests, obviously, for people that would love to have us give them some kind of a grant of monies for their organization. I'd love to give everybody some money, but obviously that's not something that's realistic or is going to happen. And certainly the ones that we do at this point in time that we do help with funding, we're sort of in a stationary kind of a mode in terms of expanding that to future to other organizations in the future. Give you an idea, we just quickly talked about the sheriff's budget. He wants 10.2 million more. The supervisor of elections is looking for 2 million more because everything now has to be in English and Spanish, so he's got to hire 2 language poll workers. The ballots have to be in English and Spanish, and that'll double the cost. Doubles the cost of not only the printing but the mailing. Amendment 10 was passed last year, which gives the clerk's office control over certain things, and so we've got to set up a finance department and a records department for her because all of that's shifting from our office to that office, and so it's not just as easy as like, we'll lock this off and put it over there. There's a lot of other things that have to go in because we still have to have an Office of Budget and Management, and that's going to cost a couple of million to be able to try to figure all that out. So all of those things are things that prevent us from, creeping out and sticking our toe in the water a little bit more to helping other nonprofits. So we appreciate what you do. We understand the situation. We'd love to be able to change that situation, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. But in saying that, government can help. Bottom line is Annalisa Winter is there now as our PIO. She can help as a clearinghouse to make sure that information coming in gets to where it needs to go. If there's a department that you need to be able to get the work done, or if you need information to go out. I don't know, I think we got 10 or 12 different social media channels on Facebook alone, and we can get the word out for you with the number of different platforms that we can have at our access. So there are things that we can do outside of money. I just saw that we have a veterans column on our sheet there. We have a veterans office. A lot of people don't know we have a veterans service office in Clay County now. People still go to Jacksonville or Gainesville. We can take care of some of those issues right here and be able to refer people to your groups. And so I'm going to make a recommendation that our Veteran Services Office or somebody represents the county at the meeting so that we can figure out better as to how to work.
I've already met with them.
Okay, good. Well, I know you're very persuasive, but I'll put a little more behind it. So anyway, that just gives you a quick peek at what we're up to with the county and some of the thinking, at least from one member. I like to tell people I'm only 20% of the people that make the decision. You know, we're one board. We get 5 people. I've been on my end of the 4-1 or 3-2 votes going the other way. But you know, we have a good board. A board that really truly believes that Clay County is the best place to live and we want to make it better. So if anybody has any questions, I'd love to take some questions or provide some answers or anything else. Patrick?
Could you talk about our new county manager?
Yes, Howard Wanamaker is our new county manager. He took over just within the last month or so from Stephanie Kapalousis. Stephanie was with us for 7 or 8 years. She went to work for Governor DeSantis in Tallahassee as the Legislative Affairs Director. Howard had previous experience in the Navy, ran NAS Jacks for 18 months. I think he was in the Navy for 26 years in different commanding positions. He came out and went to work for Hanania Automotive as Strategic Operations Director, and he's done a great job in the month that he's been with us. It is, you've heard being force-fed out of a fire hose. That's probably 3 or 4 fire hoses for Howard, because not only has he had to deal with some really incredibly difficult issues, but he's also had to learn, and a lot of times in that job, it's the history that helps you move forward. So he's trying to pick up on the history as well as moving forward, but he's done a good job. He's really detail-oriented, and he's really good with staff. Anybody else have any questions? Glad to answer.
Talk about tourism. Are we looking more sports tourism as well? We talk about ball fields as well. So is that
Yes.
one of the goals is to get more of those tournaments into the county?
That is, it seems like an easy way to go in terms of being able to generate. I mean, we already have in Eagle Harbor, Clay County Soccer already does that. They invite teams from all over to come. Unfortunately, their facilities aren't conducive to having those real big tournaments. We're actually looking at maybe doing something in the area of the fairgrounds. We're trying to talk, we thought we had a grant for $3.5 million from the state this past session. Representative Cummings and Senator Bradley really went to bat for us to try to get that, and we're going to use that as sort of a jumping off point. We're talking about maybe some property right next to the fairgrounds and keeping it all sort of in the same area. That got shot down, but we're back at the drawing board, but that is definitely a possibility.
I got a quick question, and more of a comment. I've known Mike for a long time. I knew him on the business side of the coin before he got into politics. He's one of the sharpest businessmen I've ever met in my life, and really loves his systems and processes, etc. We all thought you were nuts to get into politics.
But you weren't wrong.
How has the expectation gone? From, you had to have certain expectations getting into politics. How has it lined up?
Well, I said to Terry. Terry said to me before, he asked me, how things are. I said, well, it's all I thought it would be and more. For 12 years I was on the CDD board in Fleming Island Plantation, and I thought that was an intense pressure cooker with a lot of the senior citizens complaining because we moved a table from here and a chair from there, and we moved them over to that side of the pool, and they wanted them back on this side of the pool. Yeah, it's a lot more intense. When you're staring across the table at the sheriff, and he's, you're thinking, well, maybe I might get a ticket on the way home if I don't get him this extra $10 million. Well, then, there's a whole different process there. But yeah, it's a lot more intense, a lot more emotions in terms of the issues, and I've been surprised by the lack of communication from everyday people. And I know everyday people have jobs and they have their own situations, but I mean, in terms of the issues, I try to be as accessible as possible, and maybe 1 or 2 people will contact you, and then you try to, I try to get out and be as many forums like this as possible, so people can give me feedback or ask questions, and I could sort of tell when they, what kind of questions they ask, where they stand on a particular issue. So that's been surprising. And so that's one of the reasons we're being more aggressive in terms of trying to get out to talk to people. I've got a town hall meeting coming up on August 15th at the Fleming Island Library at 6:30. Everybody's welcome to come, and we'll try to find, it's a sort of a happy medium. Not only am I giving information out, I'd like also to have people tell me what they think of things that we're doing, so we can sort of mash up things. If everybody sort of gets together, what do they always say? There's more than one mind is better than just one person in a room trying to figure out what's going on. So, I mean, that's what I did in private business. It never had to be my idea. If it was something that was maybe a little bit of mine and a little bit of somebody else's and then a third person's and mashed them together, it was a better idea, and that worked, and that's the way we usually went. So that's been the most surprising thing, but it's been good. I enjoy helping people, and so I do on a regular basis have to help people get things done because they can't get through government one way or the other. So
I think you did an amazing job with Irma Communications and everything that was going on. I went to you consistently to know when my trees were going to finally get off my yard.
Well, we hope that we don't have to do another Irma update or another storm update for quite a while. So yes.
Thank you for all the information. It's been very informative. I have a question from your perspective and from the commissioner's perspective. What is the number one issue facing our families that live here in Clay County and our children?
Well, on the children's side, school is a big issue, and that's something that we have little or nothing to do with. That's even, quite honestly, that's even more emotional than what I deal with as far as school is concerned. But I think it's growth, managing the growth, making sure that we keep taxes low, but yet deliver services that people want. I mean, that's the key, because then it keeps real estate values high, which allows then people to want to be here. And a lot of people are against growth. I should say a lot. The most vocal group in Clay County is against growth. If anybody play Sims when they were younger? I played Sims. Maybe that's when I should have known that I was going to get into politics. But you start with one little person in a house, and then you grow the community. If your community is not growing, then basically what happens is you've got a static amount of people that are in homes. The real estate value goes down because they're paying more and more taxes because you don't have anybody new to pay taxes. So if you've got 20 homes, those 20 homes are going to be paying all the taxes, and it's just going to, because costs never go down. I mean, even if you give cost of living to a police department and fire department, and city county workers in terms of people that are out on the roads and public works, those costs are always going to be going up. Electricity, water, insurances, you have it for your own organizations. And so my feeling is the government needs to stay out of the way in terms of obstacles to prevent businesses from succeeding, organizations from succeeding, and doing the things that they need to do. And so it's going to be growth, trying to keep taxes down so we don't tax people out of Clay County, but at the same time have enough money so we can deliver the services we're supposed to deliver, which is basically fire, police, roads, garbage, all those things that make a successful community. So that I think is the biggest challenge for us to be able to deal with. And that's why we're fortunate we have folks like you, because we have the tiger by the tail on one end to do a lot of the other things that you folks do. We just wouldn't be able to do it.
You said schools is a big issue. Can you elaborate on some of that? I do a lot of work. I'm sit on the task force for crime and safety in Duval, but I'm not as familiar with stuff in Clay County. So can you elaborate on some of the issues that you guys deal with schools-wise?
Well, I don't want to get into a situation where I'm telling school board what to do because they have their own situation. I have my own problems. I wouldn't want them telling me what to do. So, I mean, as a citizen, as a taxpayer, I think we have those same kind of situations on the school side. Providing services, keeping taxes reasonable, staying abreast of growth so that we can make sure that all the kids get what they need in terms of education, providing ESE, EBD, those classes are becoming more and more a bigger part of the budget, and those kids need additional help, and those services are more costly. So I think, the school has their own issues in terms of delivering services and trying to keep taxes at a reasonable rate. and in terms of the actual content of what kids are taught and all that stuff, I'm not a professional educator, so I wouldn't even go there in terms of commenting on that.
So Mike, would you be available afterwards to do some one-on-ones?
Yes, I'll
Okay,
hang
so
on.
we're going to have to cut it off here with the questions. Please give Mike a round of applause.